Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another deck profile. This is our first deck profile for set 19, Fighters Ambitions. And to be honest with you guys, Red Android 13 has been my favorite deck to play out of the whole set. I know I've said a lot of things about the archetypes in this set, but this one I do find pretty fun. Of course, it's not as good as Gogeta or Sin Shenron, but I do think, if some future limitations happen, or maybe even a little bit more support comes out in the near future, I do think this deck is actually really solid. I like the boss monster a lot. I like the strategy. Let's get right into the deck profile. But first, if you guys are new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video. And if you guys want to help support the channel, there are tons of ways to do so down in the description. But if you want to buy or pre-order any Dragon Ball Super cards or any trading cards for that matter, it really does help out if you use my link in the description to TCG Player. Anyways, let's jump right into this. Now, I think the creator view and the search menu on Deck Planet might be bugged, so we'll just go right into the deck view here. We'll start with the leader. So on the unawakened side, permanent, this card cannot attack. That's actually an upside in some matchups. Like against SS4 Gogeta, not having to attack them early is actually quite good because they want to combo their Goku and Vegeta GT early to get awakened, right? So you're denying them that. Active and main switch card to rest mode. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, add up to 1 red android card among them to your hand, then shuffle, and then awaken and release 4 or less, or you have 2 or more energy and 1 A14 and 1 A15, both red with energy costs of 1 in your battle area and or drop. You may switch this card and up to 1 of your energy to active mode and add cards and light to hand until you have 6 life left. So very similar to the Sin Shenron Awaken, where you're tapping your leader to generate resources, but then on your Awaken you have to restand your leader, which is going to allow you to get your Awaken draw. And having the Android 14 and 15, I'm always going to mix those guys up. But yeah, having all of those in the drop and in play by turn 2 is very, very feasible. Getting Awaken turn 2 is very easy in this deck, like it is for most New Age decks. Then we have the Awaken side. Auto, when this card attacks, choose 1. You can either play an A14 or 15, both red with energy cost of 1 from your hand, or you can draw a card. I typically just draw the card because when you're playing the android from your hand, those will also, search another copy of the corresponding android. But that doesn't actually truly increase your hand size, just keeps it at parity. So I usually draw the card just to actually increase my hand size, but once you Z Awaken, you start making Z energy a lot more easily, and we'll talk about that later on. So auto, place 1 android card from your Z energy in the owner's drop. When you play a red android card, and you can add 1 red android from your drop to your Z energy. So this basically allows you to fix your Z energy, because for your Z leader mostly you need certain cards in your Z energy. So I guess we'll go right into the Z deck first. We do have 1 copy of Surmounting. Now, this is pretty much a staple across all decks, because if your leader awakens and goes down to 6 life, this can get you to 5, which can turn on your blocker negates. But we actually have a very easy way to take life in this deck, which we'll see in a little bit. But then we have the 1 Defender of Life, 2 Rush Attack. Now, to be honest, Rush Attack is looked at as like the main staple red Z battle card, but outside of decks like Sin and Gogeta that don't actually make Z energy for absolutely free, he's actually surprisingly not that good. It's very hard to get his activate main to proc, so this card's actually a lot less good. Again, in a non-Gogeta, non-Sin deck that don't generate Z energy so easily, I would definitely say Defender of Life is better, but I mean, you're only really going to burn your opponent once typically. That's why we're only playing the 1 copy. And then we have a new card, Android 14 and 15 Team Up Terrors. This card for this deck in particular is actually very good. Deflect, unique, dual attack, permanent if you have a red android with energy cost of 7 in play, which we're always trying to do by about turn 3. This will cost you 1 energy out of your Z deck, and then it's still a 3 Z energy. Auto, once per turn, when this card attacks, use 1 android for your drop in a combo, so you get 1 Z energy back. And this card gains barrier, meaning it's pretty likely to survive going into your next turn. And then auto, once per turn, when this activates blocker, switch it to active mode, so you can double block if you want to, block and then defend this thing, right? So overall, just a really solid card. And then we have the Z leader, Android 13 Nightmarish combination. I usually want to get to this thing as soon as I possibly can. So you Z Awaken for 1 energy, release 4 or less for 2 Z energy. Auto and card attacks, play up to 1 Android 14 or 15, both red with energy cost of 1 from your hand or drop. So typically you want to play them from the drop and then combo them. That'll make you more and more Z energy for almost kind of free. Active battle once per turn, place 1, 13, 14, and 15 from your Z energy in the drop. Now notice this does not care about the color. Draw 1 card, and this card gains plus 5k and double strike for the turn. So offensively, that's a double strike win con. Defensively, that's a sensu bean for the whole turn, which is a really nice effect. That just is a really solid Z leader. I try to get to this guy as soon as possible. Now let's go into the main board. Playing 4 copies of Android 14 Stoic Fist. I love this deck because it allows you to play so many other support cards for Android 13 that are in different colors. So 14 Stoic Fist is super good. Activate mainly if your leader is an Android 13 card and you choose this card and 115 in your hand and place them in the drop. Choose up 2 cards in your life, add them to your hand. So that was that super easy self-awakening I was talking about. Draw 1 card, then your opponent chooses a card in their hand and places it in the drop. Secondly, I love how this is a red deck that has an element or 2 of hand control. That's such a really cool thing to me. But yeah, so this is going to generally put me to 5 life. I like to put myself to 5 so that my first blocker negate is just getting me to 4 and I'm at that nice even life total. But yeah, even though this is technically, I guess you could say, a -1 from hand, if you don't end up taking any life, your opponent still pitches 1 as well, so you actually net even. It's really good. It can get your Android 15 in the drop to get you Awaken. Now, this card itself will not satisfy your Awaken condition, but it's very easy to get the Android 14 as well, which we'll see a little bit later. Then we have 2 copies of Android 17 finally free. This is a free negate if we are on our Z leader, but it's only live at 3 or less life. So we're playing 2 copies. I don't really want to play 3 because if you draw it early, you pretty much have to charge it. It doesn't really do anything in your hand. Like, you're never going to pay 3 to counterattack with this. So yeah, 2's been the right number for me. And then Android 13 Uninvited Guest. This is our main playmaker. So Unit Absorb for 1. The crazy thing about this Unit Absorb is he can be in rest mode himself, and he will play the Android 13 on top of himself in active mode, and he doesn't care what Android 13 you play as long as it's a 7 drop. It can be in any color. And then of course he has the auto to help us, you know, fix our hand by finding our androids. Now, for my current Android 13 lineup, I'm playing 3 copies of Total Annihilator. This is typically the best one to go into because it has a lot of synergy with the archetype. It lets you combo and make more Z energy. It's got a random permanent that's relevant against SS4 Gogeta because this thing can't be minused by any of their minusing abilities on their low cost guys. So that's pretty good there. He can be played from your hand, but typically you're always going to play him with Unit Absorb. And that generally becomes a 1 energy play thanks to the SS4 Gogeta Unison. Because like I said, even though this Unison plays the Android 13 in rest mode, the Unit Absorb on the 13 plays your 7 drop in active mode. So it's just a perfect pairing here. I mean, we play a ton of 1 drops, as you can see. So this Unison just generates us tons and tons of value. It seems like for a while now, they're going to be designing red decks to work with this card. I don't know why they decided to make this like a cornerstone of red, but it is just that good. So yeah, definitely worth noting there. And then for off-color 13s, I'm playing 1 copy of Adamantine Avenger. This card's a little bit less good than I thought it would be, only because we still want androids in our drop for our Z leader and some other things. But I think it's still a solid effect where if the opportunity presents itself, you can KO a guy and then you can make your opponent pitch 2. So again, those elements of hand control that I do think can swing a game in your favor. That's why I'm including the 1 copy. And then we have 2 copies of Super Android 13 cores of the trio. So this is a 1 energy 5k combo that can be comboed for free if your leader's an android. So it's not a bricky 1 energy combo in our hand. And then it's got triple attack and the auto. If your leader's an A13 card, this card attacks, your opponent chooses one of their battle cards and KOs it. So if you need to basically wipe your opponent's board of small guys, this thing can do that while swinging 3 times. So I generally like this lineup. I'm not playing the Unending Nightmare. I think that that's pretty cool how if you can set up 2 of them, you can make your opponent potentially pitch their whole hand. But nowadays, people have unisons in hand, people have extra cards. So that combo is not super likely to actually go off. But yeah, this is the lineup that I have liked. Now for consistency stuff, we have 4 copies of Android 14 Mechanical Assailant and 4 copies of Android 15. They basically do the same thing. I don't know why they decided to put limit 1 on these, because that has actually screwed me over sometimes. Like, since when does a typical 1 drop have limit 1? Like, I get it's also a searcher, but it just searches for another searcher. Like, it doesn't, I don't think this leads into anything like degenerate or loopy. Yeah, I don't know why they put limit 1 on this, but that screwed me sometimes in the past. But anyways, yeah, so you can either find the other android, so if you play 14 you find 15 and vice versa, and then if you're on your Z leader, you can just draw a card. And that's generally what you do with your Z leader. You attack, you play one of these 2 from the drop area, and then you just draw your card and then combo these into your Z energy is typically how that works. Then we have 3 copies each of the Android 15 Uninvited Guests and 14 Uninvited Guests. I don't really actually cast these guys very much. Like, it does happen once in a while, don't get me wrong, but they're really just more names because, especially since you want to, find cards off of your Unawakened side, you want to be able to pitch copies of 15 to Stoic Fist. So, yeah, while I don't play them all that much, they are just extra names and extra androids because, we want to make sure we don't whiff off of our various effects. Then we have the 1 Yamcha that we're allowed to play. Obviously, I had to make changes to this after the ban list dropped, and this was a deck that was playing 3 Yamcha, but now we're just playing the 1. Playing 4 Testing the Op. Of course, I was playing 2 Violent Rays in this deck because that was pretty standard for most red decks, but now we're just playing the full 4 Testing the Op. And again, we can get to 5 like literally almost on command whenever we want, so that's solid there. I'm choosing to play the Vegeta SCR in this deck. There are many options you have for this deck. I mean, of course, you can play any of the black SCRs, Pan, Spring Hive Time. If you're on a budget, you can, of course, play Heroine's Lineage. But I think, you know, with blue being pretty popular in the format, I think this SCR is just very good at dealing with blue because you get to remove their Board of Barrier battle cards, of which blue actually has a lot. And you also get to just remove their Unison, which is solid as well. And then we have the 1 Dark Broly, a pretty standard, staple-ish one of overall most decks. 2 Wolfang Fists, which is just randomly good in matchups like Blue Gohan. There are just a lot of like random 15k dual attackers that allow you to combo cards in the drop, just like this deck has in the Z deck. But blue has them, yellow has them, so yeah, Wolfang is solid. I can even see bumping Wolfang to 3 and maybe just playing 52 cards. I don't think that'd be too bad. The 4 Raditz, of course, again, we get to 4 whenever we want. We actually want to put our Android 13s, our 7-drop Android 13s, back into our deck. So that works out nicely. 2 Omen of Awakening, replacing our Vegeta Resolve Renewed. Since we're playing the Gogeta Unison, we can play this pretty effectively. It does suck to have to crit a life, but this is actually an answer to bigger floodgates, like, for example, Vegeta Ready to Rumble or Topo Righteous Aid. These were things we could not answer previously with Resolve Renewed. So I guess you could look at that as a silver lining. And then wrapping up the main deck, we have 2 copies of Omega Shenron Unfeeling Retribution. This card can be played in any leader that has a Z leader in the color red, so that's why we're playing 2 copies here. I like this card a lot because it's actually really good in red matchups, because most red matchups have to minus things to get removal, and this basically negates the first minus ability your opponent uses on this card in a red mirror. So I do like this card a lot for red matchups. And you know, going off last meta, the format is pretty much blue and red, maybe with some other things sprinkled in here and there. So I think this is a pretty good main deck tech against your red matchups. But anyways, that is the list I have for you guys today. Of course, I want in the comments below, how are you guys playing Android 13? What would you change about my list? Definitely let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.